Hi there, it's Rachel Greig and welcome to the Darkroom Door YouTube channel. In this video I'm sharing a card tutorial using the Geometric Gems abstract stamp and showing you how it looks embossed in gold embossing powder and then watercolored. So what I'm using is the Ranger watercolor cardstock. This is a really nice textured cardstock to stamp onto and use with distress inks and other watercolor mediums, and I'm just stamping it up using the Distress Embossing Ink. Now the embossing ink is a really nice juicy embossing ink. That's one of the reasons I really like using it, because it does stay wet for a long time, which allows you to emboss easily with this embossing powder. So the one I'm using right now is gold, and you can see there I've stamped the design 3 times across the page because I wanted to create a pattern rather than just using it the once. You can just use it the once if you want to create some really nice borders, or there's so many different ways you can use the abstract stamps. Definitely check out our blog, which has lots of different ways you can use other abstract stamps. For this video though, I wanted to create a pattern, so I've stamped it 3 times and then embossed it with the embossing ink and then poured over that gold embossing powder. And what I'm doing now is just heating up that embossing powder, just using a heat gun, and you can see there that the gold is starting to emboss really nicely, and it just has that really nice shimmer. This is a really nice embossing powder. It's just that plain gold embossing powder from Ranger. So I'm just heat embossing here. It just takes a little bit of time just to get those embossing particles. Now embossing powder is actually a little plastic particles, so when that melts, it turns into a nice shiny embossed raised surface for the normal embossing powders, that is. So you can still get some other types of embossing powders that are more grittier, and they've got like mixed media powders which have thicker particles in it. So there's a wide range of embossing powders. This one here, this gold one, is just a really nice fine gold, and when you emboss it, it embosses nice and shiny. Now the good thing about colouring in an embossed image is because the embossing actually has like little raised areas, that's what the embossing does, it gives you a little edge that makes it easier to colour in. So if you wanted to colour this in perfectly, the embossed edges do actually make that a lot easier. But because I'm using a watercolour technique, I don't need it to be particularly perfect. I mean, that's what I love about using distress inks and watercolours. So it just means that I can roughly colour it in or just create that really nice watercolour feel and look to it. And how I'm doing that is I'm using distress inks on an acrylic block. So what I did was just press down these little distress inks just on that acrylic block just to create like a little palette. I could have just done it directly onto my craft mat as well. That also works as a really nice watercolor palette or ink palette as well, but I've just used that acrylic block just to contain those inks on that block. And then I just pick up the ink using a water brush and then just color in my little gems here. So I'm using 3 different colors here: the scattered straw, the abandoned coral, and the wild honey, just to give it a nice little warm lanterny kind of glow. And with the nature of this stamp, you can see here how with the angles of the stamp they can actually nest in, not perfectly if you wanted to create a real closer pattern, but the way that I've done it here, you can see how it does nest in quite nice and creates a really nice pattern. So now that I've done all of those warm colors, what I want to do now is add a contrasting cool color, and I'm using the Evergreen Bow ink pad, and what I'm doing now is just going in between those geometric gems and then just coloring up that background. So this is one of those designs that you could mass produce. You could actually do all the embossing in one go, and then you could do all the watercoloring and save that for another day and do all that in one go. So if you wanted to create these as Christmas cards and give it more of a festive feel and just change up your colors and use like reds and greens or any other color that might match whatever occasion, and it just means that you can mix up the colors and just make them appropriate to whatever occasion you're making your card for. So now I'm just mounting my finished stamped piece onto a piece of white cardstock and then onto a craft card base. I've also stamped the Milestone small stamp, which says celebrating a milestone, just in some similar colors to what I colored in with the geometric gems, and then mounted that onto the card with some foam tape to complete. I hope this has given you some good ideas on how you can use this stamp. You can find our stamps on the Darkroom Door website or ask for them at your favourite craft retailer. Thanks so much for watching.